Hey, welcome to Blastzone, my Sleazed, Glammed, and Blue show. And I have somebody from that era that you all won't believe I'm talking to. Go ahead and introduce yourself there.
I'm Steve Lynch from Autograph, and I have a new book that I'm promoting. It's called Confessions of a Rock Guitarist. It's out there on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and Bookshop and all that right now. It's a whole story about how I got started in the business and basically my whole bizarre life all in one book. So,
So you have a bizarre life, huh?
oh yeah, it's been very interesting. A lot of roller coaster rides, but it's all good in the end. You learn from your mistakes and your accomplishments and successes as well.
So let's start from the beginning, okay?
Okay.
When did you decide you wanted to pick up a guitar and play guitar?
Well, that would be probably in 1964. I was 9 years old, and I saw the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show, and I just absolutely loved them. And then my sister, my older sister, got the Meet the Beatles album, and we listened to it just constantly. It was just like, wow, this is what I want to do. But I didn't actually, really start getting into it until Jimi Hendrix in 1967 when he came out with the premiere album. Are You Experienced? And then that was it. I just decided that's what I'm going to do. But there was a kid down the block that already played guitar, so he wanted me to play bass so we could put a band together. And I said, yeah, sure. So I learned how to play bass, and so we were jamming and everything. And then Hendrix passed away in September 18th, 1970. And that day I traded the bass in, and I got a Stratocaster guitar, and that's been it since then. 1970 is when I really, really committed myself to guitars. So
Do you remember the first time you ever performed live?
yeah, like 1972, probably 71, 72. We were doing some jams and stuff, but around the neighborhood and all that, with our friends. But the first time I ever played live was 1973. And then I was in a band that called Outlawed that actually, we were making a living off playing live. So that's when I started to play live was 1973.
Did you release anything with that band?
No, it was more like a top 40 band. We had some originals, but it was more geared at top 40. Then and that was all in the Seattle area up there. And so we played the Pacific Northwest. It was like in British Columbia, Western Washington, on over to Idaho and Montana, and down into Oregon and Northern California. That was our main playing field right there. And so I played in a band that was Outlawed, first band, and then I played in a band up in
Mhm.
Seattle called the Ross Taylor Band, and then the last band I played with up there was a group called Silver Mode, and then that's when I basically, uh, after I played with that band, that's when I moved to Los Angeles to go to the Guitar Institute of Technology, and that was the best decision I ever made right there.
So you grew up in Seattle.
Yes, I did.
Wow. And so one of my favorite artists of all time is from Seattle, and
Who's
that's
that?
Andrew Wood from Mother Love Bone.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely, yeah. All
I
those
like him
bands
so
are,
much that I like
yeah.
him so much. Tattooed his signature on my arm.
Oh, right
So
on. Very cool.
he, it's wild when you think about Andrew and think about the the phase of music that killed your era of music.
Uh-huh.
With grunge. But
Right.
if Andrew would have lived, it would have been more glammier type music because Andrew had that sound and that feel of
Right.
not grunge, and all the bands were
Right.
wearing eyeliner and they were all, dressed up, all
Yeah.
the way back to Alice in Chains.
Yeah.
So
Right.
growing up in Seattle, this is my question. Growing up in Seattle, do you think, as I do, if Andrew would have lived and the album would have came out, that the scene would have been totally different?
That's a good question. I'm not sure how that would have played out, but it could have had a definite effect on it up there. But the whole grunge thing, with Nirvana, first of all, breaking the ice up there, and of course Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, and all that. That was the Seattle sound. A lot of people don't understand that. They think that they just created that sound you know, to do something different from the typical LA, hair band sound. But no, that's actually the way that bands sounded up there. And it's the way that they dressed up there. It's the typical dress up there is holey jeans and plaid shirts and Doc Marten boots and stuff. That's because of the weather, being rainy and chilly all the time up there. That's just the way people dressed up there. That's the way I dressed up there until I started playing professionally in 1973. But, it was at the end of the 80s when the whole grunge thing came in. And, the 80s were getting a little bit way too glam for me. And I think it needed a change. And when the whole grunge thing came in, and they were the lyrics were more about, real life experiences, even though it was, a lot of it was about depression, suicide, addiction, things like that. It's like those lyrics talked more with the kids, you know what I mean, of the time, rather than, the 80s lyrics. It was all about partying. It was all about limousines and groupies and everything. Well, the average everyday kid, they didn't see any of that, you know what I mean? So they needed something that they could relate more to in their lives. So
My Bible was the Metal Years.
right, yeah.
The Metal Years, Decline of Civilization.
Right.
That was my Bible. And,
Right.
a lot of people that grew up in the era will tell you that there was no music. And then we got The Dirt by Motley Crue.
Right.
And we were like, holy shit, this is the most amazing book I ever read. And I
Right.
think to this day that every band, it should be mandatory to read The Dirt to see how
Right.
it
Yeah,
is to be in a
absolutely.
band and to see
Yeah,
how it is hard.
I saw the
You know?
movie, but I didn't read the book. But we were actually a part of that whole thing. I think we're mentioned in the book actually when we toured with them in 1985 or 86, I think it was. And that was just a hellacious tour. I mean, that was way over the top. Believe me, the Motley Crue tour was. I don't even remember that much of the tour. I was always partying with Tommy.
Tell me how Autograph got together. And yes, we're talking about the Autograph people that did Turn Up the Radio, one of the biggest anthems in the world, and we'll talk about it in a minute. But
Yeah.
how did Autograph get together?
Well, we were guys that had played together in different incarnations. Like me and the singer had played together in a group called Looker, and then the bass player and the singer, Randy Rand and Steve Plunkett, the singer, had played together in a group for a long time in the LA area, in a group called Wolfgang. And and then I also played with the drummer in a project for a while, and the keyboard player I actually knew from Seattle. He's a Seattle guy too. He's originally from Pocatello, Idaho, but I knew him back in the early to mid '70s in the Seattle area. He was in a very popular band called Bighorn up there. But we were all fairly well established LA guys at that point. This was 1983, the latter part of 1983. And we used to get together and jam because we all knew each other. We were all just friends, but we always wanted to kind of play in a band together because we had played together in different projects. And so we were doing this jam thing at Victory Studios in North Hollywood. And, the singer, Steve Plunkett, asked the producer, Andy Johns, to come down and give us a listen, have some beers with us and stuff. And Andy came down and we played him some of the originals that we were working on. And Andy absolutely loved them. Andy and his brother, Glenn Johns, they're English chaps. And anyway, but they had worked with, members of the Beatles. They had worked with the Rolling Stones. They had worked with Led Zeppelin. So they had a long history of, very famous people that they had worked with. And so anyway, that was a big deal that Andy John liked our stuff. And then he invited us to go into the studio after he saw us. He came down on Saturday, and then the following weekend, we went into the studio with him. He had free time. So let's go cut a demo. And so we did. Over the weekend, we cut a 5-song demo. And, on Saturday, we recorded it. And then on Sunday, we mixed and mastered it. And then that tape, actually, it was a little cassette tape that Kenny, the drummer, played for David Lee Roth. And David Lee Roth was the Kenny Richards, the drummer, and David Lee Roth, they were jogging every morning, and so they were kind of like, exercise friends, and so anyway, David loved the tape, and he said to Kenny, he said, "Hey, we, Autograph didn't have a name or anything yet. We were just guys who
Mhm.
got together and jammed. That's all it was." But David Lee Roth said, "Hey, would you guys want to come out and open the 1984 tour with us?" Now, here's the catch: is that Van Halen used to open for Wolfgang, which was Randy Rand and Steve Plunkett back in the mid '70s. Right up until probably '77, Van Halen used
Mhm.
to open up for them, and so David Lee Roth thought it would be cool because he knew, Randy and Steve Plunkett. He said, "Well, why don't you guys come up? It'll be like a total switch where you guys are opening up for us now." You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
David knew who I was and stuff. He had heard my name around LA, and he knew of the other guys as well. And so we thought about it. We said, "Well, we're all in these other projects. We're all busy with these other projects." Me and the keyboard player were playing in a group called, with Holly Penfield on Dreamland Records, and then Steve Plunkett was playing in a group called Silver Condor on Columbia Records. Kenny Richards was playing in a group called The Coup on A&M Records, and Randy Rand was playing with Lita Ford. And so,
Oh,
yeah, and so we got together, and we talked about it and thought, well, we could probably go out for a few months, but we had obligations back in LA because we had all these the groups that we were working with, but we thought, done recording with them, we could probably go out for a few months and just have some fun. We'll think of a name, on the way there, and we did. We thought of a name on the way from driving from Los Angeles all the way to Jacksonville, Florida,
oh,
and
wow.
we thought of a name in the back of the Winnebago, broke it down Winnebago that we had, and it turned out to be Autograph, and then we started playing. Next thing you know, all these record labels, they loved our material, and so they started asking us, after the show, you guys interested in signing? Kind of going, well, no, we have obligations at home back in LA, and so. But they kept on. I mean, everybody. I mean, it was Geffen, it was Warner Brothers, it was A&M Records, it was Epic Records, and so up in uh, when we played Madison Square Gardens in New York, RCA
Mhm.
approached us and they said, "Look, we got a special deal for you," and it's a deal that they had never done before. And it was basically unheard of, and that's basically keeping 100% of your publishing.
Most labels take 50% of your publishing,
Hmm.
and most labels either do a 360 deal where they own everything,
Right.
including your merchandise,
Hmm.
or they give you a demo deal where they take and listen to your music, never do nothing with you. And then
Right.
you also have the master deal, which means that they take
Right.
everything, your master, you never get them back, you never get to do
Right.
anything.
That's correct. Yeah.
Kind of,
Yeah.
kind of like
Thing.
what Taylor Swift's going through, but now
Hmm.
Taylor Swift made enough money she could buy her own music back. So
Right. Right. Absolutely.
it's like that. So I just want everybody to know what you're. I wanted to explain that part because
Sure.
a lot
Thank you
of
for
people
doing
don't
that.
understand that. That
Yeah.
they think you just get in a band, they give you $1 million, and you're rich the rest of your life.
Right.
Yeah,
And we refused that part of it. We didn't want to get a loan. We just wanted to get the record done. And like I said, we were all seasoned guys. We
yeah.
had played all over the place. We had played professionally for years. We'd recorded on several different albums, each one of us. And so to us, it wasn't, we were all like, I was 29 at the time. And so I'd obviously been around the block a few times.
Yeah.
And everybody else in the band, except for Kenny, everybody else was already in their 30s, 31, 32. And
Uh-huh.
so we weren't new kids on the block. We were well seasoned guys, and so we didn't want the front money. We know how that works, and so we just wanted to start making money from the sales themselves right away. And so we stuck to that, and so we didn't have to pay back a loan that's up front. And a lot of people don't realize this is that everything that they do, they charge you for it.
Hmm.
I mean, if they're talking to somebody on the phone about you, you are charged for that. The band is, and just as long as it relates to you. And if they take you out to dinner, you're paying for that dinner, not them. We found that out in New York because we
Oh
did
yeah,
like a $10,000 dinner. This is all in my book too, and
yeah,
so
yeah.
we thought they were taking us out because we were. It was the first time meeting the president of RCA and all that, and the vice president. We were all schmoozing it up and having a great time, and we'd already gone gold at that point, and so we thought they were taking us to dinner, but then when we got back to LA, we got a check for $10,000 or a bill for ten thousand
Yeah.
dollars from them, and our manager, she just said, "Yeah, this is very typical. I knew that you guys were going to be paying for this in the end." And all the promo that they do, all the marketing that they
So,
do, the printing of the albums. I mean, you have to pay everything.
I work for a label. I work for a label
Uh huh.
now, and I'm the A&R guy, and I
Uh huh.
signed like 12 bands. And, our deal is 50%. You get all your publishing. We don't take any of your
Mm-hmm.
publishing unless you use our publishing company. You pay for the
Right.
CDs and vinyl to be made. You ship them to the distributor that we have,
Right.
that's a worldwide
Absolutely.
distributor. Because,
Yeah.
most young bands don't understand this. They think, oh, well, we got to pay for a product. Well, you're going to pay for it
Yeah.
with your label because I don't care. I'm not going to say what labels because, not, that's something I don't want to do. But
Right.
most labels, you have to buy that product
Oh yeah.
to be able to take it on tour with you. So why
Right.
not buy
And
the product and
right.
get distribution, sell a few
Yeah.
albums around the world, and
Right.
do things like that? I mean, bands today just don't understand that. Everything's
No, they
digital,
don't.
digital, digital, digital. And it's
Yeah.
like my friend Bobby Liebland from Pentagram.
Hmm.
He's
Huh.
got big. He got big because of the memes and all that about him.
Uh huh.
His Spotify shot up to 298,000 listens, but he ain't gonna make
Right.
shit off of it. Spotify, you're
Right.
not gonna
That's
make
right.
shit.
Yeah, and that with the whole streaming thing and all that, you just make they're working on that. Of course, that's going through a major makeover right now with the whole streaming process because yeah, you don't make any money off of that. But the other thing is that back then when you made a video for MTV and VH1, you had to pay all that money back too. And so realistically, like we didn't make any money until after we went gold. We made
Oh,
nothing. Yeah, we
I
made not a
agree.
penny until after we went gold, and then we started to see the checks trickle in. But yeah, we had to sell over 500,000 before we saw a penny.
Well, let me ask you this, okay? Let's kind of speed up our process. So everybody knows this or turn up the radio.
Uh huh.
Everybody knows it's played at sports arenas. It's played everywhere. Okay,
Yeah.
you had that massive hit with Turn Up the Radio. What do
Uh
you
huh.
think the problem was with the last two albums that
Well,
you didn't do
this
it
is
well, and you really didn't have a huge single?
so. Anyway, what happened though is after the first album, it was Bob Summers that passed away, and he was the president, and then Bob Busiak came and took over. But everything kind of shifted for the whole company. They like fired like 50% of their staff, and so they had to retrain all these new guys. These new guys that they trained were young. They were younger than us, and so they didn't know the inner workings of a professional record label. And
Hmm.
so it wasn't only us that got hurt by that, it was the Pointer Sisters. It was Mr. Remember them? They
Oh
went
yeah.
they went double platinum on their first album, or quadruple platinum. And then there was Kenny Rogers took a hit from it, to the Eurythmics. So there was all these bands at that time that were really upset with RCA because of the fact that they were really dragging their feet. And all these bands had albums that came out at the same time as we did in 1985 with our second album. And so all of them were very upset. I talked to Steve Ferris several times because I live. Steve Ferris was a guitar player, Mr. and he lived right down the street from me, and so we always used to see each other at Casa Vega, this little Mexican restaurant down there, and so we sit there at the bar and chatted up
Mhm.
for a long time. So, and he was saying that they were very disappointed because the second album just kind of tanked, after the first album going quadruple platinum. And so he said that everybody, and that he's the one that told me about all the other artists that were involved with that, and said that nobody's making any money. And then I heard more about it later on about how mad they were and everything. So it's just one of those things where you don't have any control over it. We did as much touring as we possibly could. The other tours that we did, like at that time, were like I said, Motley Crue tour. We toured with Aerosmith. We toured with Heart, Ronnie James Dio, Bryan Adams. We did some shows with Whitesnake and all that. So we were really busy. But the thing is there was no push behind the record at all. Same thing with the third album. Yeah. And so we tried, the best we could with it to try to promote it. But, you really need the weight of the record company and all the promotions and the connections and the marketing ideas that they have.
So is all three of those albums out of print now?
Well, yeah. What we're doing right now, what I'm basically doing, is I'm negotiating with Sony, because Sony bought out the rights to the masters, like what you were talking about earlier, RCA masters. Sony bought those masters after, the RCA deal was up, back in probably 1988. We did our last album in 1987. So Sony bought them up in 1988, 1989. And they've owned it ever since, that catalog of those three albums. Now I'm negotiating with them right now to finalize the deal. We're right in the final throes of it, so that we get the rights back. Now,
but I thought you said that you didn't sign the rights away. You got 100% of your publishing.
Oh no, that was publishing, but not the possession of the master tapes. No.
Oh, okay.
That's two different things.
So you all signed a master deal, or did you sign a regular straight record label deal?
Well, it was a straight record label deal, except for we got 100% of the publish rather than 50%, which is typically the case with any major label. But of course they get to possess the masters after the recordings are done. They own the masters, and that's when they sold it to Sony. RCA sold it to Sony, and now Sony's deal is up with them. They ran out of time. It was a 25-year period, and so obviously that's been over. And so now we're negotiating on back monies owed and securing a deal with them so that they're out on the market again, because they haven't been out there.
You gotta be making good money for Turn Up the Radio alone. I mean,
Well, I still make money from publishing and writing royalties. They don't touch any of that. I'm just talking about the mechanical sales. From the album.
When you wrote Turn Up the Radio, did you think it was going to be as big as hit as it is? Because I mean, it's in the top 10 as the greatest hair metal rock band tunes of all time. I mean, it might be in the top 5.
It's hard to predict. So we weren't really sure exactly how it was going to do, but being fairly well seasoned musicians and writers, we thought this is really catchy. And the radio stations are going to love it because of the fact it's called Turn Up the Radio. But what really helped it out a lot is we decided, we came up with this marketing plan. And that's that we go into the studio and we say, all the different all the different P1 radio stations, those are the most popular. You say, turn it up, KYZY, you know what I mean? Turn it up, WXPQ, and so, hi, we're Autograph, we're telling you to turn it up, KYZN, you know what I mean? So we did all of these stations, all the K stations, all the W stations on the East Coast. We did all those. It took 2 days to do it, 2 8-hour days to actually do it. But we sent those out with a single, and they absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
Because because it became kind of an anthem for the radio stations. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so they absolutely loved it, and they played the heck out of it. So I'm going, wow, good call. That was
I mean, when you like me, doing this and doing things I do, it's so cool when you can get an artist to do a bumper like that for you. Because then
absolutely.
It means a lot. I mean, it really means a lot, because then people look and go, oh, okay, well, this guy's pretty legit. You know,
Right,
if
right,
you're
absolutely.
gonna do a bumper for them and
Yeah.
all that. So let's fast forward. Autograph breaks up.
Uh-huh.
You the band goes a separate way. You all
Yeah.
get you back together again. I think one more time,
Yeah.
but I don't think Steve's in the band at that time. Or I don't know. I
No,
can't remember.
no, it's just me and Randy basically, and
Yeah,
then
you
we
and
hired some
Randy.
others, a couple others to
Yeah,
play with the project. We did some
and
shows, and that
from
was fun.
the last time you played
Hmm.
was M3 one year, right? Was that the last time you played in the band
In
close
where?
to it? M3.
No, I think the very last time I played was actually in Kentucky.
Oh wow.
Yeah, at something River Festival, or
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Cool,
But you see, at
cool.
that point, my carpal tunnel was acting up so badly. Um, when I was back in Florida, I was living in Florida at this point. I had moved from, I'd lived in LA for 14, 15 years, and then
Yeah.
in 1992, I moved to Florida, and then I moved back to Seattle for 20 years, and then I moved back down to Florida. Um,
Huh? Everywhere.
what's that? Yeah, I'm in the
Everywhere.
Tampa area now. I've been here for 9 years, and
Everywhere, man. Please.
yeah, I've been there. I should say. Right now, I'm in New Jersey, but I'm kind of all over the place. But at that point, it was okay. What was the topic we were talking about? It was
We were talking about your last show with
oh,
autograph, but
last show.
we
That's
can,
right. So we played this Kentucky thing, but the doctor I saw, what I was trying to get to is the doctor that I saw was in Florida, and he said you're going to have to take some time off because I went to a hand specialist down here. I've been to one in
mhm.
Seattle. I've been to one in California, and so but it was always the carpal tunnel issue. I've had problems with that since 1978, and I practiced so much. That I actually did damage to the cartilage in my fingers, and I get carpal tunnel fairly easily. But playing live, it was really eating me up. My hands were freezing up, and I thought, that I don't want to play on stage when I can't sound the best I possibly can.
Yeah.
And my doctor says, look, you got to take some time off, otherwise you're going to get to a point where you're not going to be able to even hold a cup of coffee in the future. And that really scared me, because he said that this is very serious. And so I did. I told the band, look, I got to take some time off. This is it, and so I did, and that was July or August of 2019, and so that was the
Yeah.
end of that. But then there was a lot of other stuff I had going on in between the original band and that. I did clinics I had written 3 books on the two-handed technique, and
Hmm.
books 1, 2, and 3 of the right touch, and so I went out to promote those along with St. Louis Music was endorsing some of their equipment like Amp Egg and Great Amplifiers, and so I was doing these clinics all over the world, and I did 325 clinics in 20 different countries, and I did all of the United States except for Maine and Alaska. Those are the only 2 states I didn't teach in. And
Wow.
so then I did my solo album, Network 23. That I did that in Ohio, I did it in Los Angeles, and I did it down in Florida when I moved there. And so that came out, but again, I tried to shop it, and this was 1995, and nobody in LA, none of the major labels they wouldn't even listen to it because my name was attached to it. They go, oh, Steve Lynch from Autograph. No, we're not listening to that. Because anything like in that time era, because grunge was so strong, anything that was related to the whole 80s scene, they said, no, you're done. And so I had Marco Babineau, who was working at Geffen Records, and he shopped it around for me. He said, Steve, nobody's even listening to this because of your name. You have the stigma attached to your name, which is 80s. So that was that for that album. So then after that, then I opened up a music school. I went back up to Seattle and opened up a music school, which was a great success, and that went for like 20 years. And then but I had to move out of Seattle because now I was having breathing problems up there because I'm allergic to the black mold up in
Yeah,
Seattle.
yeah, yeah.
And so my doctor says, you got to get out of here. You're not going to survive another winter here. And so I did. And I sold my house. I packed up a truck, towed my car behind it, and drove to Florida with like, nowhere in particular that I was going. I thought, well, I lived in Fort Lauderdale before. I think I'll try Tampa this time. And so I did, and I've been here for 9 years. Now, at the end of the summer, I'm moving back to Tampa or to Fort Lauderdale again. So,
So,
yeah.
so one question, you can say yes or no.
Uh-huh.
Do you think that Autograph will ever be back together again, or is it a done deal?
I think there's a possibility of that. Um, so I would have to say, um, yes, that there's a good possibility of it, but this is something that I have to think about next year. And I
Yeah,
also
yeah.
have to see, it also depends on how my hands are doing. I mean, it may be if when I start practicing again, which will be after the first of the year, because I don't even have time for that right now. But when I start doing that again, it may just be for recording at home because then I can
I'm,
take breaks. You know what I
yeah,
mean? But there's so many songs that I have written and so many ideas that I have in my head that I want to share that don't have anything to do with like the 80s. Like the solo album that I did, Network 23, it had nothing to do with the 80s. It was
yeah,
completely different because I've always, been inspired by like Pink Floyd, and Led Zeppelin, and Genesis, and Emerson, Lake,
yeah.
and
I get
Palmer.
it. I get it.
Yeah, and so I was into those kind of bands, more experimental type bands, and so that's why when I did Network 23, it was an experiment. Now I want to go off and even experiment more, but I also miss playing live, so that may be something where I put another autograph together and we go off and play some live shows. So.
Because two members are gone now. Randy ran,
Mhm.
and your drummer or
Yeah, drummer
keyboard
Kenny
player.
Richards, he passed away, and then in 2008, the keyboardist Stephen
So
Isham, he
who?
passed away as
Who are
well.
there?
Three guys are gone, and then Steve Plunkett, the lead singer, he's basically has said that um, his vocals won't hold up for a live tour, and I
Yeah,
completely understand that because he's probably 72
I
or
get it.
73 now, and so yeah, I think he's 73 now, and
Wow.
because I just turned
Mm.
70 myself,
You
and
look,
I know.
listen, you look good for 70, man.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so all those years of immaturity finally paid off, I guess.
I guess. You look good for 70, that's for sure.
Oh,
So
thank you.
let's end on a good note. Let's talk about your book because you got a book that's out.
Yeah, well,
And
the book that
tell us a little bit
basically,
about it.
pardon me.
Tell us a little about it.
Oh, okay. Well, the whole idea for the book came about by, I was always telling people stories because all these bizarre situations kept on happening to me, not only inside the music industry, but outside as well, and all through all my travels and everything. So I was telling people these stories, and everybody kept saying, you've got to write a book about this stuff. You've got to write a book. They're just so fascinating, everything you've been through in your life. And so what I did was maybe about 10, 15 years ago, I started writing down single sentence reminders of all these different stories. And so before I knew it, there was like 200 sentences that I had down. I thought, well, that's too many to go into one book, obviously, because it would have been kind of like an
Yeah.
encyclopedia at that point. So what I did was I took I thought what I thought would be the most entertaining and most interesting stories. And when COVID hit, I thought, okay, this is it. I can't go out and play live. I can't teach. I can't really do anything at this point. So I decided, okay, well, this is at that point where I'm going to start writing the book. And so I did. And by the end of COVID, I'd actually had the basic, a manuscript for the book written. So it took me 2 years, but then things kept happening, and so I was adding those onto the book. Like I was talking about, the lawsuit happened, so I mentioned that in there, and then the Hall of Fame thing happened, and I reconnected with this lady that I met on the Van Halen tour back in 1984. We reconnected, and it was like, We that was 4 years ago, and we've been together ever since. And now we're engaged to be married. And we got engaged at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for the unveiling of the autograph display there, and so then of course the book coming out. And so there was just all this stuff happening, which ended up working out for the better because it kind of more completed my life up to this point. You know what I mean? And and so it worked out very well. And besides that, it wasn't only these other things happening, but like the publishing company, because of the fact that they were kind of shut down for 2 years, they were behind with all their other authors too. So they had to get caught up as well, but everything shut down for that 2 year period. And so I'm glad that it finally just came out, this past May 20th. And like I said in the beginning, it's available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. It's all online right now, in the bookshop, and pretty much anywhere you can get it. And then it'll soon be in stores as well. But they always do the online release first. But yeah, it's a bizarre story of my life through all my travels and all the weird things that happened, like like a 2 degrees of separation from Ted Bundy. I mean,
Oh
I knew
yeah.
this girl in junior high, and here's this like this, and she met Ted Bundy, and her mom was working beside Ted Bundy, and she's Anne Rule was her mother's name, Leslie Rule, and she's also a very popular artist. But Anne Rule is the one that wrote all the stuff, The Stranger Beside Me, and all
Oh
that.
yeah. Yeah. She
Yeah,
was amazing
and so
story.
yeah, I knew them, from junior high school, and so we reconnected, like about 5 years ago, when I told her I was writing the book and all that. And so she told me that story, and I went, oh my God, I had no idea, because I saw her that night after the Rolling Stones concert in 1972. And
Hmm.
so I asked her if she wanted to ride back to the south end of Seattle, and she said, no, no, my mom's coming to pick us up. And I guess I was 17 then, so she was probably uh, a year younger than me, maybe 2 years younger. She was probably 15 or 16. And so her mom came and picked her up and her friends, and they went up to the suicide hotline center up on Queen Anne Hill in Seattle. That's where her mom worked. And they met Ted Bundy. Bundy was working next to his mom, and his mom and her mom and Ted Bundy were like good friends, and she knew him better than anybody,
Wow.
But there was always something really strange about him. And then when Leslie met him that night, she was only 15, like I said, and she's going, man, there's just something really weird about this guy. So it's full of really bizarre stories like that throughout the whole thing, and things that I had personally experienced, that people go, my God, how can you be at the right time at the right place, just right at that time, and have these things happen to you? And all
Well,
my explorations around the world, traveling around, traveling about abroad, I should say. And, I have a lot of stories about that during the clinics, and even just vacationing, all these bizarre instances happening to me. So go to, Steve Lynch. If you type in Steve Lynch guitar on Facebook, it usually comes up. Also on Instagram, Steve Lynch Official. Then I'm working on the website. That'll be up in probably about a month. But it's Steve Lynch official website. And I've had one before, but it kind of just, I didn't really keep it going because everything else that I was doing on, social media seemed to be working just fine. But then there's also the autograph, site, where that's got 36,000 people following me on there. So, and following the band and all that. And Regina, Randy's, since Randy passed away, that's his widow. She's really helping run that site, and she's doing a brilliant job at it. And so,
well,
it's there, so people can reach out to me.
I got to say thank you to Regina too, because after we did
Yeah,
the interview,
right.
which will be on the other show,
Yeah,
um, she reached out to you for me, and you said you would do this, and
yeah,
uh, man, she's awesome.
yeah. She is.
I had to get a
So
heart
cool.
cath, and she was asking me how I was doing, and I mean, just a lovely woman, honestly. I mean,
Yeah,
just
absolutely. And we've become, my fiance and I, we've become just really great friends with her over the last 4 years, and we just feel really fortunate to have her in our lives, and she feels the same way about us, because we helped her through some pretty tough times, and we were more than glad to do so. So it worked out very well.
Cool.
And
Cool.
so we're going to see her here in Atlantic City on the 4th of July, so that's going to be great. She's coming out.
Well, it's been great talking to you, man. And
And you
you
as
know,
well.
I wish you the best of luck in the world.
Thank you.